While performing a set at the famous Hollywood Bowl this week, comedian Dave Chappelle, arguably the greatest stand up of all time, was attacked in the middle of that set by a radical trans activist. You see, Chappelle has run afoul of the group that he refers to as the alphabet people for his irreverent and politically incorrect treatment of their cause and their politics. Seems that certain people who need to be ridiculed aren't really equipped to handle said ridicule. Now, the running theme with those folks is that they insist that what they are doing is in self defense because, in fact, words are violence. Judging by how the maggot in question wound up looking after the attack, I would say that he's probably got a much better perspective of what actual violence is at this point. But the larger point is this: the Los Angeles district attorney refused to press felony charges in the case, even though the trans activist in question did have a bladed weapon on him at the time of the attack. Now, law enforcement brethren James Pearson, who I trust implicitly, did give me a private fact check on that by letter of the law, even in the state of Texas, it is likely that the DA would not have pressed felony charges. And again, I trust his judgment and his knowledge of the law implicitly. He is no doubt correct in that assessment. My only retort is this: let's flip the script a little bit and say that it had been Kathy Griffin who was attacked by a Trump supporter wielding, say, a water balloon. Suffices to say, I believe that not only the media treatment, but the district attorney's treatment of the incident would have been completely different, regardless of the letter of the law. Which leads us to another event that happened this week, a brief, not even a brief, but a draft of a brief dealing with a Roe versus Wade decision was released by the Supreme Court. Now, again, we're dealing with people who are going under the impression that everything that they do is self-defense because words are in fact violence. But one of the abortion activists decided to publish online the actual residence addresses of the justices in question, winding up with demonstrations like this outside of Alito's house and Justice Kavanaugh's house, where we got to see this happy bunch of well-adjusted folks. Now, again, I'm a First Amendment absolutist, and as long as they remain on a public street, they haven't stepped outside the boundaries of what I would consider legitimate protests. However, there can't be any confusion about what the motivation is, nor can there be any confusion about what the silence from the administration and the Department of Justice means with regard to this. It is obviously an attempt to intimidate. Now, they haven't reached the threshold of violence yet, but this maggot mob in Portland, you know, the usual suspects, our favorite folks from the lovely group Antifa, they turned out in a similar protest downtown and they smashed windows and did what they generally do, being the brown-shirted shock troops of the left. Now, these folks shouldn't be equated with these folks just yet because they have not crossed the threshold into violence. But given that we are dealing with the same group of people that were responsible for Chaz Chop in Seattle and were responsible for these kind of spectacles in Portland, the line, I believe, and again, these beliefs are my own, are painfully thin. Now, you may take issue with that, but this was one protest in Los Angeles over that same brief in which at least one police officer was reported injured as a result of violence, hurling bricks, that kind of stuff. All the while, this cadaver in chief insists that the number one violent threat to domestic tranquility here in the United States are right-wing extremists. Odd. I didn't see an actual attack on Kathy Griffin with a water balloon. Odd. I didn't see mobs turn out in the streets to prevent Democrat politicians from even speaking. Now, again, they're going to fall back on January the 6th, and we can't really say too much about January the 6th, except for the fact that out of 250,000 people present on the ground, less than 1,000 entered into the building, and all of them have been duly incarcerated. In fact, some unduly incarcerated. But again, we are not dealing with facts anymore. We are dealing with feelings and perceptions. So much so that the government's position has become, who are you going to trust, us or your own filthy lying eyes? And in fact, they have decided to create a disinformation governance board, which sounds dangerously close to an Orwellian ministry of truth. That's right, boys and girls. Just keep watching the Glow Box, and we will tell you what to be afraid of. Now, that may be good enough for the grazer contingent, but for people with 2 brain cells or more left to rub together, I would say that the bullshit meter is pegged. And no matter how hard they try to squeeze to control the narrative, fundamentally, people are suckers for the truth. The truth shall set you free, but first, it's going to really, really piss you off. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and I cannot stress this enough, certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart, they are guided by the mind, and they are guaranteed to choke you with a big, fat dose of the truth cock. Welcome back, boys and girls. It's time once again for the Sunday Sermon. Been an eventful little week and an eventful drive over the pass, training with Brother Morgan over there in Portland. Where's the fire in the building, man? Everybody in for the drum roll. Come on. Coming out of the starting gate with our bumper music, as always, the band Red Desert from the smoldering embers of the once great city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Another city that went up in flames as a result of that, those mostly peaceful protests after the George Floyd decision. In any case, we are here. We made it. We got a lot of good stuff to cover, and I plan to cover it thoroughly. Got all my bullet points lined up. Everything's here. Had to do a little bit of scrambling, caught some snow coming over the pass, and it followed me all the way back to town. So that's where we're at. Do a real quick roll call. Let's see who's on board. Brother James Pearson. Oddly enough, just gave you a mention there, brother, in the opener. Hope you appreciate that, and I appreciate you letting me benefit from your wealth of knowledge and experience in the law enforcement world. You were absolutely right to check me on that post because, letter of the law, you're absolutely correct. Again, my only retort is there's the letter of the law and there's how this would have been affected politically, but I know we're probably in the same mind on that, so we don't need to belabor the point. Brother James Pearson, we got Brother Joel on board, and of course, Roman and his lovely wife Carrie from OGTales.com. Yes, my lovely Oksana. Sergey loves you too because Russia. When are we going to start cranking out war babies for the apocalypse, woman? We got to pass on that seed. We got to leave something for posterity. I mean, it doesn't have to be physically intimate. I wouldn't disrespect either of us like that. But, test tubes, syringes. We can do a lot with modern science. Oh, yes. Lovely Miss Emmy, the original Sinner Sister herself on board. I've got my Reverence Rangers. I've got my Prophets of Doom. Stacy Bond on board, brother. Yeah, I did see the ACAB sign. You think... Oh, Ryan, I love you, brother. Where would I be without you? The mighty Bonsai Bonsa on board. Been too long, brother. Been too long. Always good to see you here. Always good to see you on the post as well, man. Just a regular contributor. Brother Neil Ross, my official quote collector. We have got to get busy on the book, man. I'll send you the email address. We got to get that folder organized. We got to get busy on the book. Quotable Bard, Volume 1. I think you guys are going to dig it. Brother Neil has been keeping track of every worthwhile quote, and some that he sees as worthwhile that I really thought wasn't my best work. But he's kept track of all of them for years. He's been a good friend, and he's been a helpful supporter of the program. OG Prophet of Doom, Reverence Ranger, and there we go. Emmy, it was good to see you last weekend as Brother Joel. Adam, I see you, buddy. Truth cocktails. Yeah, that was good save, man. Good save. But yeah, Emmy, it was good to see you. It was good to see Brother Joel last weekend. Again, the reason why I wasn't there, I was in Houston, Texas, and it was for a memorial service for the dearly departed Brother Harold Best. Um, and of course that time is also devoted to my wife Charlie, who is doing phenomenally well. By the way, she is responding really, really well to the chemo. Everything is looking up. She has an unbreakable spirit. Any of you that have ever met her know that. She's my world, man. She's my life, and I'm doing my best. She's been my strength for so long. I'm doing my best to be hers. But everything is going really well. Just a little update on that situation. She is going in for a PET scan this Friday. We're going to know a little bit better, and we're looking forward to some good news on that. So appreciate all the support and just basically all the prayers and the comments, and a lot of you guys have reached out to her personally. And that means the world to me as it does to her. She considers you all extended family, man. Before landing on planet Bart, she was a very private person and remains so pretty much to this day. But she's thankful for the presence of everyone and all the support and all you people who have reached out personally. And I would like to thank you for that on her behalf as well as mine. It means the world to know that we've got these kind of people in the circles. So, all right, we're gonna jump into the midst of this. Let me get a couple of sponsor shout outs out of the way. First of all, of course, Roman and his lovely wife Carrie and Allie and Roxy and the bevy of beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. I believe Roman is going to be back on the Twitter platform now that we're going through that polar shift on that particular platform, owing to brother Elon Musk taking over. Joel, she's something, isn't she? She is. She's definitely one of a kind. Again, opiumtales.com. You got to check them out there right now. I believe that they're going to be back on the Twitter platform soon, and you guys can check out the artwork and the testosterone-driven commentary. Besides being a flagship sponsor, Roman is one of my oldest and dearest friends, and I got to see him last weekend as well. Spend time with him and Carrie, and that was fantastic. Family in every sense of the word. So thank you for all of that. Another sponsor shout out, as always, to my Viking brethren. Talking about Casey and Dusty Tellison at Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. They are setting up with the big smoker trailer, the Viking Longship. They are setting up at American Gun and Pawn every Thursday, start at 11, and they sell until they run out. And they always run out because it's one of those things, man. When you got something that is that freaking good, it sells itself, man. So when you see people lined up around that block like a pill mill clinic, like junkies waiting on their fix, the analogy actually kind of works. Once you get your mouth wrapped around some Nordic Smoke Barbecue, you will understand. So hopefully you guys can make it out and see them on Thursdays if you live in the Spokane area. And of course, they do catering for special occasions and events. And they also do the holiday stuff. They have smoked my holiday birds like every fucking year since I've been living in the Northwest. And they're phenomenal people. So thanks to friends and flagship sponsors. I love you guys. Thank you again for the continued support. Aaron, don't worry about being late, man. I mean, you made it. I actually thought I was going to be running a little bit late. I want to give another shout out to Brother Morgan Garrett. Uh, you guys know I am constantly about the combatives and building self-defense skills and making myself harder to kill. You guys also know that I have been actively involved in the Filipino martial arts in one way or another ever since my days with the Houston Stick Fighting Association, back when I was training with folks that training with at least one gentleman who's not speaking to me anymore. But I built some skills. It was I had always considered that middle ground one of my weakest areas. I can, we can throw dogs all day long, punches, kicks, knees, elbows. I'll, take you to task with wrestling, grappling. We take you to the ground, whatever you want to fucking do. I can handle handguns. I can handle rifles, particularly Kalashnikov platform. But that middle ground, and Brother James Pearson, I know you're on board too, and that's probably the scariest place for a lot of operators, a lot of LEOs, is that middle ground, that stick and knife range, where we're dealing with in close, you're at bad breath distance, you were dealing with impact weapons, you were dealing with edged weapons. Here is a little something, and I'm just going to throw this in as a sidebar. The longer you stay in this and the more that you find out about it, the things that everybody knows, and you know how I feel about that, the tyranny of everybody knows, the things that everybody knows and the things that everybody take for granted, you realize mean precisely dick in the realm of actual violent encounters. Here's a little stat, and I may be off by 1 or 2 points. Feel free to fact check me on this. But if the victim of a violent attack involving a handgun, and again, handgun, not a rifle, we're dealing with different things entirely. If the victim can make it to a hospital inside of 30 minutes, 93% of victims of shootings involving handguns will survive. 93%. The statistic for knife attacks, again, same set of circumstances, even getting you to the hospital within 30 minutes, only about 71 to 73% of the victims of a stabbing attack will survive. So, again, gets back to the cliches, well, he brought a knife to a gunfight. No, he did not bring a knife to a gunfight, because until you have deployed that weapon, you brought a paperweight to your own fucking execution. That's what's actually going on here. So, knowing that that was a subject of personal apprehension for me, and knowing that it was an area of vulnerability, I have gone out of my way for a number of years working with different instructors to try to build that skill set, to try to bridge the gap at that middle range, to make it to where I have no desire to be involved in an edged weapon encounter in any fucking realm, under any circumstances. It is not something that a sane and rational human being would think of in any way but, holy fuck, I never want to be there. But you may not have the choice, because the world is full of predatory miscreant scumbags, and they are always looking to test. And the more uncertain the world gets, you have to give yourself a measure of certainty. Brother James Pearson, who is watching, we met through this, Tony Blauer and the Spear System. I'm a firm believer in that for people who have no background whatsoever in any kind of fight skill, and you've got a limited amount of time to give yourself a set of tools to save your life. There is except no substitute for Tony Blauer and the Spear System. He has spent 40 years as a devout student of violence, back engineering and weaponizing the startle flinch response. But again, we're dealing with unarmed encounters, bridging the gap into armed encounters, but unarmed encounters. You've got to build those skills. And going forward in the world today, particularly some of the things that we could be headed into, you have a responsibility, both to yourself and to your loved ones, to make yourself harder to kill. So you want to seek out that training. And, look, just punching a heavy bag, doing 3 or 4 rounds on a heavy bag, if you don't know how to box and you don't know how to throw punches, yes, you're building muscle strength and muscle endurance, but you're also practicing being wrong, right? as far as the skills. You got to seek out the training. And there is no better investment that you can make in yourself than to find capable instructors and deal with areas where your skills may be lacking. For me, that is edged weapons. For me, that is the stick and knife stuff. So through Tuhan Belton Lubis in Seattle, very, very dangerous man, very, very skilled man. You can find him online. He turned me on to one of his students in the Portland area, a gentleman by the name of Morgan Garrett. And Morgan Garrett and I have been working together about every couple of weeks. I go over the pass, and we get to spend some time on a Sunday morning learning how to deal death at bad breath distances. And he has advanced both my knowledge as well as my understanding, as well as my capabilities in those edge weapon areas. So if you were in the Portland area, and PDX is a pretty broad, area, but if you are in the Portland area, you can find Morgan Garrett on my social media feeds and any of that stuff. Take the time, spend the money, do some one-on-one, and get those skills sharp. Give yourself, I'm fond of saying it, give yourself that measure of certainty in an increasingly uncertain world. So that's where I was this morning, running a bit late coming over, because coming over the pass, again, you're coming over Mount Hood, essentially, or right next to Mount Hood. So it's not unusual to get snow all through the year coming over the pass. But today I caught it coming over the pass, and it followed me all the way back to this little town in the Bend/Redmond area where I am working. It followed me all the way back. And so I was kind of scrambling. So if I seem a bit scattered right now, we're going to pull it all together. We're going to move forward. We're going to get everything covered. Brother James Pearson, the more skilled you are at violence, the less likely you are to be forced to use it. I fully agree with that assessment. And I would add, the more, I don't know if judicious is the right word, but yeah, we'll roll with judicious. The more judicious you are about where and how you choose to engage, the more skilled you are at it. I would, and a lot of that comes with age too. And I'm sure Brother James Pearson will agree with us on that we get a lot more discerning about where and how we choose to engage and under what circumstances and under what provocations. I think we're both, certainly both of us now are at a point in our life. It's like, dude, you can say whatever the fuck you want. Say whatever you want. I am not engaging, period, until I have no choice but to engage. Once I have made the determination that I have no choice to engage, I have no qualms whatsoever about initiating the encounter. But again, those are very, very, very few and far between. But yeah, overall, judicious works, less to prove when you know what you can do. Exactly. You guys have heard me use this analogy before. In the Old West, the safest place to be was in a room full of fucking gunfighters. Absolutely the safest place to be, because everybody knows what the other guy's fucking holding. So people are a lot less likely to act up. The place that gets dangerous is if you have one or two gunfighters, or one gunfighter by himself, right? And a bunch of rowdy yahoos fresh off a cattle drive full of fucking liquid courage and wanting to sling some iron around. That's when shit gets out of hand. The modern day equivalent of that. Speaking of students of violence who understand making themselves harder to kill, Brother Sonny shows up on cue. I love it, man. I love it. I have all my people have arrived. Good to see you, Sonny. Sonny will have some input on that as well with regards to being judicious in your use of force, and the more skilled you are at violence, the less likely you'll be forced into a position to use it, but definitely the more judicious you will be when you choose to exercise those skills. So yeah, that's where we're at. In this day and age, though, it does become somewhat unpredictable because you have an entire generation of predatory miscreant scumbags that have gotten the reinforcement on a couple levels. Number one, the judicial system provides no consequence anymore, thanks to the Pollyanna grazer crowd and bail reform, and all in the name of equity, whatever. Turning people loose on PR bonds that have actually taken, and this Kim Ogg, DA, I'm looking at you, Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg, I'm definitely looking at you, cunt, turning loose felons, people with long histories of violent felonies, one of whom discharged a firearm in an attempt to kill a police officer and was released on a PR bond. Okay, this is what we're dealing with. So the predatory miscreants are walking around thinking there is no consequence because the judicial system provides no consequence. And as a general rule, regular, ordinary, day-to-day people are not going to provide that consequence either, because the likelihood of a predatory miscreant, this is one of the analogies that I use. I have had the benefit over the years, the extreme good luck to have been able to train and to train with some really, really top level guys, right? I will never be the luta libre fighter that Brother Carlo Prater is. I will never be that guy. I will never be the wrestler that Grant Johnson is. I will never be the jiu-jitsu practitioner that Jeff Rexroad is. I will never be able to run a Kalashnikov platform like Brother Sonny, or any number of other lethal skills that Brother Sonny is carrying around. I will never be on that level. The good news is the likelihood of me running up on someone that skilled in a typical bar fight is just about fucking nil. Why? For the exact reason that Brother James Pearson and I were just discussing. If they're that fucking skilled, they're not out looking for the trouble. The flip side of that, again, when you are dealing with predatory miscreant scumbags, is they don't run up on skilled good guys often enough. Trust me, I revel in it every time that they do, and we get to hear about it, and the media does their thing where, because my take on it. Fuck them and fuck their grieving family. I don't care about their mothers crying because didn't do nothing. I don't care. I don't fucking care. He's a piece of shit. You raised a piece of shit. That piece of shit tried to do piece of shit things to good fucking people, and now he's fucking dead. Good. I just felt the world get lighter. Whew. Right? And I have no qualms about stating that. I would state that in front of a jury. God forbid it ever come to that. I would say that without a shred of fucking remorse. But unfortunately, it's nice when we get to see it. When we get to see a scumbag run up on the wrong fucking guy and get bled out. It's nice. Some of you guys jerk off the porn at home. I scour the news for articles where some scumbag, fell down a flight of stairs onto some bullets. And I can crank off to that all day long. The goal of training is earning the privilege or ability to dispense violence efficiently, judiciously, and with moral righteousness. The gospel, according to Brother Sonny. The gospel, according to Brother Sonny. I'm going to put that up, and I'm just going to leave that sitting there for a minute so you guys can just ponder that. But again, getting back to the subject at hand, the likelihood of those scumbags running up on a good person who does have the skill level, it's pretty fucking unlikely. And unfortunately, not enough of these fuckers get bled out. And as a result, over the arc, the curve on a long, like the Fight Club quote, on a long enough timeline, the life expectancy for everybody drops off to zero. On a long enough timeline, as the numbers of these scumbags exponentiate and as their confidence gets bolstered every time they are able to commit these violent acts and there are no consequences, sooner or later, one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to get to the point where good people are going to suddenly feel that urge to purge, or there will be such a proliferation of the aforementioned predatory miscreant scumbags that they will start running up on these people with the skill sets. One of the things about people who do have the impetus to recognize that we are in a early stages of collapse of civilization sort of timeline right now is a lot more people, even though they're not necessarily going about it the right way. They're buying a gun, but they're not training with it. They're training, but they're going about their training in the wrong way or with the wrong people, or they mistake, static ranges, knowing how to shoot for knowing how to fight. Having said that, the abundance of people doing something is at least increasing the odds that maybe the scumbag in question will not run up on a James Pearson or a Sonny Puzikis or a Reverend Bart. They might not run up on that, but they might run up on a single mother who's got a hammerless 357 in her purse or in her pocket, and she's just fucking had enough. As long as the end result is one of these scumbags getting bled the fuck out, I don't care how it happens. I would prefer that single mother would have had the wherewithal to train in the spear system or train with a Morgan Garrett and learn how to work a knife in close, or train with a James Pearson or a Sonny Puzikis and learn not only the skills, but the mental conditioning to be equipped to deal with a situation like that. You got to go to some pretty dark places. But all of the things being equal, if a scumbag gets bled out, I don't care. I don't care. It would have been nicer if she could have been a little more skilled or what the fuck ever. But even if it's just out of desperation, throwing a chunk of steel into somebody's guts, not really knowing how to exercise a blade or even the basic anatomy to know how to go about taking someone apart, or she just shoves that hammerless belly gun up under his ribs and just pop, pop, pop. And then comes the smell. Sorry, but we are talking about abdominal gunshots here. And if you know, you know. So yeah, as long as the end result is a scumbag getting bled out, I don't have a particular moral issue about that. That was definitely that was definitely a little trip down town tangent street there. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to. Let me see. I missed a comment from Ryan. Spengler wrote about this decline in 1918. When is the apex? I think we may be living through it right now, Ryan. We may be living through it right now. And I'm hoping that no matter which way it turns out, we get over the hump quickly. Because at this point, I'm ready to go either way. I really am. The power of indignation has a high success rate. Yes, something that you and I have heard Coach Blower go into at length. The power of that indignation. It does have a very, very fucking high success rate. So maybe if it is that single mother, instead of it being me or James Pearson or Morgan Garrett or Sonny Puzikis or any of the people that I've had the good fortune to count among my friends and brothers and to be able to learn skills from, even if it's not one of us. If it's just a single mother with full of righteous indignation with 5 rounds of 150, let's go 158 grain, right? Because that's probably what she's going to wind up buying, 158 grain round nose lead, because she doesn't know about hollow points, and the 158 grain round nose was fucking cheaper, whatever. But she's got that hammerless 357, and 158 grains of fuck you 4 or 5 times over still makes the same point. The end result is the same. Looks like Brother Monty made it late, but I'm on board. Glad, bro, glad, because we haven't actually even dealt with any of the bullet points or the tags yet, Monty. I went off on a rant, which is way out of character for me. So here we are. 35 minutes in, and we haven't even touched the first of our segments, which, of course, you guys already know where we're headed. We are going to take a little plunge down Ryan's rabbit hole. That's right, man. We made this a regular segment a long time ago. It's been pretty popular. You guys know Brother Ryan. I need to, Ryan, I need to get another headshot from you so I can actually do like a meme, or something, the Ryan's rabbit hole with, your smiling face and a thumbs up or holding a firearm or something. But Brother Ryan, outside of being a dear friend and a brother in every sense of the word, the motherfucker is deep, and he, very much like myself, and on a lot of levels, more so than myself, he makes me work for it. He is a repository of knowledge, both obscure and esoteric, and we will go off on topics when it's just the two of us that, we go down these rabbit holes, and people will watch as if they were viewing a tennis match, just watching the dialogue go back and forth. So every week we go down one of these obscure little rabbit holes. We pull out something from our repository of useless information, and we plant the seeds. We open the door to the rabbit hole, and you guys get to go down as far as you wish. This week we had a couple that we were kicking around back and forth, and made the decision to go with this one because it segues well into some of the things that we're going to be discussing with the later bullet points. But this week, the rabbit hole is going to be the uncanny valley. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this phenomenon, but basically there is a scale. The way that uncanny valley works, there is a scale, a sliding scale, if you will, about the resemblance to humans, how human-like, human-esque something can be before it becomes close enough to being human but still not human, at which point the psychological phenomenon, there is an innate revulsion, as it were. For those of you who are fans of Carl Jung, maybe even as deep as genetic memory or collective unconscious, that we can look at, one of the cute little 1950s sci-fi robots, like Robbie the Robot, and, some of the others are, with the big waving arms and shit like that. We don't get repulsed. But then we see this. This is Sophia. That is the name that she has been given. She is the world's first robot to be granted citizenship, I believe, in either Saudi or the United Arab Emirates. I cannot recall. Feel free to fact check me on this. The first graphic I had was from a film called Uncanny Valley. You see here, we are dealing with a human actress, but there's something just not human about that. Right? You take a look at something like that. If that were to come up to serve you at your local fucking diner, you would immediately feel a deep, heartfelt gut revulsion, like, get this fucking thing away from me. Same basic thing with Sophia here. I got a couple of different pictures of Sophia. Now, you take a look at Sophia, and she's about as close to human as it gets in the robot world, but yet not quite fucking human. And if you spend any time now, if you're, if you're a science nerd, okay, cool. You can look at the Boston Dynamics murder dogs and see nothing but the gee whiz appeal of that. But on a gut level, we are repulsed when it gets past a certain curve of when it gets past a certain curve of resemblance to human without actually being human. Once it gets past a certain point in that arc, we go from, oh, isn't that cute, to holy fuck, get that thing away from me. Now, there are a couple of things about this particular phenomenon. The one thing that troubles me about it, and has always troubled me about it, is that means, because it is innate, it is not a behavior that has to be learned. It is as ingrained into our DNA as the since we're on this, as the startle flinch response. It's hardwired into us. We feel that way whether we want to or not. It's not a behavior that has to be trained, which means that it is intrinsic to our evolutionary psychology. Okay? Which means that it is a response that we evolved. And just like the startle flinch response, we developed that as a survival mechanism. So ponder what that implies. Because what that implies is that at some point on our evolutionary timeline, it became not only beneficial, but perhaps even, and probably even, essential to our survival and reproduction to develop a response to things that closely approximate humans, but are not human. Ponder that. Not before bedtime, but ponder that. That means that at some point, our species had to develop a survival or creator conflict. Excellent point. And this is, God damn it, Ryan, this is why I love it. We had to, yeah, Ryan, they did. They gave her citizenship. It wasn't a sex robot. Sophia wasn't one of the fuck toy robots. She's actually, they have her programmed with a fairly advanced bit of AI, to the point where on some level she's actually developed her own sense of humor, and again getting closer and closer to that human-like behavior without being human, and thus creating the revulsion. A lot of the comments that I'm seeing here from Dennis and some of the other folks, from Monty, from Roman, yeah, kill it, definitely kill it with fire. Welcome to Westworld, right? No, that's generally my as a thought flips. Damn it, let me stay on, okay, Ryan? Just let me, you're bringing my focus here. But along that evolutionary timeline, we had to develop that response. What could have brought that on? There are a number of theories. Some would say that it is the surviving Cro-Magnon part of our DNA that had a revulsion for Neanderthals and vice versa. Some would postulate that maybe there were things that walked among us, things that later became the stuff of myth and legend. Some would say, for the more extraterrestrial inclined, for the Zechariah Sitchins of the world, some would say that other alien races may have walked among us that tried to approximate our look and our behavior, and we had to develop that response. So I want you guys to go down that rabbit hole as far as you're comfortable with. Again, the phenomenon itself is called uncanny valley. depending on how much it strikes your interest, you will be able to entertain yourself for hours, days, even going down that internet rabbit hole about what the phenomenon is, about what it means, about where it came from. Perhaps the co-species existence when you're a human, so-called caveman, or maybe freaking aliens or androids. Pick a cable channel, right? Yeah, exactly. But once you go down that internet rabbit hole, you can follow that down a good little way, and it's going to be the things that strike your interest. But again, it keeps coming back to having to have developed an instinct for things that approximate human behavior that are not human. Well, how does something like that manifest itself now? I would say, and again, this is you take the uncanny valley rabbit hole wherever you want. I would say that part of that same emotional response, and this is my own theory here, part of that same emotional response is a contributing factor to what we have come to know as mass formation psychosis. How would that work? Bertrand Russell, fear stimulates herd instinct and tends to produce ferocity towards those who are not regarded as members of the herd. Well, if we're seriously involved in othering, okay, and you guys are familiar with the phenomenon of othering, you dehumanize the enemy. You dehumanize your political opponents. You dehumanize the people with whom you disagree. I would say that some of that same revulsion, some of that same gut reaction feeds into the fear-based response of the mass formation psychosis. Because when you develop that revulsion, what is that revulsion that you get from Robot Sophia? What is that but fear? Again, just as natural as the startle flinch response. It's hardwired into the DNA. What is that fear? You take that fear and utilize the power of the media, because again, perception, reality, stimulus, response. If you control people's perception, you control 9/10 of their reality. If you control the stimulus, by default, you control the response. So, some of the same fear, in fact, possibly the same root fear that is involved with that uncanny valley revulsion, is what skilled propaganda ministers, skilled propaganda practitioners, the Leni Riefenstahls, the Joseph Goebbels, the Jen Psaki's of the world. It is the same type of revulsion that they exploit to elicit that fear response. Because when that herd instinct takes over, right? The uncanny valley response comes from all of us being human and knowing that we're human. I look at you, hey, you're human, you're human. Yeah, we can all agree. This is whole big, we're just one big happy human family. But no, that's not quite human. If the othering of the propaganda ministry is effective enough and well executed enough, it literally will elicit the same response. As in, we are all human. We agree that men can be women and women can be men, and there are 47 genders, and there were no irregularities in the 2020 election, and the vaccines are effective and cloth masks prevent transmission. We are all human. We follow the science. We are all part. But they, Sutherland at the end of fucking Body Snatchers. Oh, right? I believe that it feeds on the same fear response. And I believe that othering, that fear response, that elicits that herd protected behavior, that elicits that gut level revulsion, I think it all stems from the same root level fear. What that is, what evolutionary biological mechanism is responsible for that, I can't even begin. But deep down, if you had to ask me for a theory, well, now you got it. I believe that that is I believe that it does stem from the same evolutionary biological survival mechanism. And people who are very, very skilled at using it, governments, deep states, intelligence apparatus, they know how to feed. They know how to feed that fear. They know how to other. Again, follow the rabbit hole wherever you want to take it, but that is the Ryan's rabbit hole for the week. We are going with the uncanny valley, so feel free to follow that as far down the rabbit hole as you wish to go. I'm going to put a couple of scrollers on the bottom here. There we go. Cool. All right. Again, still learning my way around StreamYard. Getting a lot more comfortable with it. I don't have a producer. It's me and me and a microphone and a webcam. And the microphone and the webcam were provided by a longtime friend who I also got to see last weekend at Harold's Memorial. Mike Stone was kind enough to contribute those to the war effort last year about this time when I was up on that unfortunate sojourn in Iowa. So there was that. There's Mike. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. While we're on, before I move on to the next thing, I just want to take a couple of seconds. The older you get, living a long life means living long enough to get to see all of your friends and your heroes and your brethren die. I just want to take a couple of seconds to pay homage to somebody who shed blood and sweat and tears with me on the mats. He was a teammate. He was a brother. He was my friend, Jermaine Flowers, who passed last night due to cancer. He fought it for a long fucking time because Jermaine was a fighter at heart. So just a couple of seconds for any of my people of faith, just to send up a little silent prayer that I hope that his passage was peaceful. I hope that it was painless, and prayers for strength for his family. Jermaine, you will be missed. Just wanted to pay homage to that. I couldn't have gotten through that whole program without at least mentioning it. I know Ryan was close to him as well. Several other people on this feed. So here we go. Othering. Could similarities be drawn between this and the Merovingian dynasty, Christianity, Muslim war? You see, this is where we're at. This is where, oh, brother, dude, you don't have to. Yeah, no, don't even have to thank me for that, bro. We were there. We were there. He was very much a good man. Very much a good man. And he loved his mama, didn't he? Oh my God. Man, I can't say enough good things about Jermaine. He's held the spirit. And again, I hope his passing was peaceful and painless. And till the holla, brother. Okay, back on. That was an excellent point that you just made, Aaron, and that, of course, is exactly the nature of the rabbit hole. You take it. You take what you take when you take it whatever direction you want. And you follow that rabbit hole down as far as it goes. I remember when he walked in the Militich at Sam's gym, dude. Ryan, I can remember Jermaine talking to. I remember talking to Coach Pat. Coach Pat and I knew each other on the periphery at that point, but Jermaine he was like, Coach Pat, he was like, he said, sparring Bart is like sparring a fucking zombie. Like, he said, it don't matter what you throw at him until you kill that central nervous system. He's just going to keep coming at you. Any of you guys that have spent any time like training with me on the mats, that's pretty fucking accurate. But Jermaine, man, he was something. I remember, good Lord, I remember we were in Grant Johnson's wrestling class one time over at Paradigm, man, and he got in. It was like a belly to back. He got it underneath, and he fucking gabled and just lifted. And hung on for dear fucking life, man. He turned and spilled and dumped me right on my fucking skull, man. And just out of raw fuck you instinct, I mean, I hung on. That's all I had, was just hanging on for dear fucking life. But dude, that 300-pound motherfucker dropping you on your skull, that is what Jermaine was something, dude. He was something. Just 1,000,001 stories and 1,000,001 pictures, man. But we're Dennis, that's a funny little side story, and I might tell that one day. Ask Dennis about similarity between about the connection between playing racquetball and LSD and the Abraham Zapruder film of the JFK assassination. There is a parallel. One day we will go into it. But yeah, I did want to give a little nod. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right, Gino. I did want to give that nod to Jermaine. So let's roll forward now. We got through the rabbit hole. I want to get back to Chappelle. One of the bullet points that I wanted to cover today, and if we will look, pull up profiles right here. Again, just everything just kind of shifting on the fly. Here we go. Okay, so the sliding scale of selective outrage and propaganda, we touched on a bit of that. But the violence and projection issues, that was a bullet point that I definitely wanted to make sure that we covered. Because the left, as you are starting, yep, dude, all through Coach Frank, Greg, all the people that we fucking lost, man. Jesus. Okay, yeah. So projection, the left, projection issues. I haven't seen projection issues that bad at after an Antifa riot at an IMAX. It's really gotten horrible with this, specifically with regard to the with the Chappelle attack. Okay, what that is reflective of is just how devoted they are to the premise that words are violence. What has Chappelle done to the trans community? Forget LGBT across the board. The trans community specifically, what has he done? Had a few laughs at their expense, right? But no, having laughs at someone's expense, it's okay, say, when Rush Limbaugh dies and every leftist fucking Twitter loser, fuck that guy, I hope he's burning in hell, blah, 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 making inappropriate jokes about this thing or that thing. We take it in stride. Why? Because outside of the left, we still have our spines and our balls. And we have not lost that sense of humor yet. There's no sense of humor on the left. He had a few jokes at their expense, but to them, jokes are not jokes. Words are not words. Words are violence. Jokes are denying their existence, denying their humanity, and they're very, very devoted to that. Have to drop off. I'll catch the recording later and have a good week. Brother, thank you. Always good to have you come out, brother. Always good to have you come out. Thank you for that. And pass my good wishes along to the lovely wife. I want to make sure that I stay in Nelda's good graces, because otherwise there will be no salsa. Plus, I just appreciate the support. But damn, the salsa, man. I'm serious. So thanks for coming out, brother. We will see you. And the replay, I should point this out for everyone. We go live, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We roll live. The replay is now available on BitChute and Rumble. So if you miss that, or if for whatever reason we eventually get booted off of YouTube, that's where you'll find me. So always got to have backups to your backups. The projection issue, right? We were even told by our president this week that the biggest threat, that the MAGA crowd, and I'm quoting here, the MAGA crowd is the most radical group of extremists in American history. Now, he backed off that a minute and went recent American history, but he didn't back off of it entirely. And bet your ass that comment was made on purpose. Because as long as something is extremist, you can deal with what? You can deal with it as a national security issue, a homeland security issue, which is why it's no secret why, or what the motivation was to put this Disinformation Governance Board, this Ministry of Truth, as it were, under the auspices of the Department of Homeland Security. Because now saying something, not even saying something that is untrue, not even saying something that the truth about it is sketchy. You can make an absolute factual statement, but if it varies from the official narrative, they can treat it as a threat to national security. This should chill anyone to the bone. And believe me, it would if these same people who are pushing this had the election gone differently in 2020, let me correct that, had Trump been given proper credit for winning the election in 2020, and he were proposing something like this, could you imagine the reaction? But again, it's the projection. You guys are all about extremism and hate, say the people that are attacking comedians on stage for jokes. You guys are the party of bigotry and intolerance, say the people who, under any other circumstances, would not allow a disparaging comment about a marginalized group. But if they step outside the ideological orthodoxy, you're not a black man, you are a House or an Uncle Tom. You're not a woman, you have internalized misogyny. You're a bitch, you're a cunt. We can make fun of your looks. Try disparaging Lizzo for being a fucking 400-pound hippo squeezing into a fucking thong. You're a fucking misogynist. But, you know, we can belittle Melania or Sarah Palin. And there are plenty of perfectly reasonable things to belittle Sarah Palin about. You know, her looks, cheap shot. Again, if it weren't for double standards, they'd have no standards at all. But it's not about the double standards this week. It's about the projection. And the projection is, some of it comes down to Saul Alinsky. If you guys have ever read Rules for Radicals, and if you haven't, you should. Because even Sun Tzu says you want to know your enemy. I believe it's rule number 4. Accuse the other side of the crimes that you are committing. That's Alinsky textbook. And I'm wondering, and I'm very conflicted about this, I'm wondering how much of the projection issue is a legitimate lack of self-awareness, and how much of it is a deliberate falsehood. I think you got 6 and 1/2 dozen of the other. I think the ones who are working as de facto propaganda ministers, the people at MSNBC, CNN, Jen Psaki getting ready to join the board over there. You know, the cunt who Biden placed in charge of the Disinformation Governance Board, Ministry of Truth. Those people, they're following the Alinsky rule. They know exactly what they're doing. They know what the facts are, and they are deliberately projecting. However, for the vast majority of the fawning faithful, it's really a complete lack of self-awareness. No self-awareness, no reflection, no sense of irony, nothing. Because again, truth to them is as fluid as gender. And maybe even more so. David, good to see you, man. Picture how terrified they are that they are losing control of the narrative. Oh, they're reacting because they lost control to it. No, it's not about one platform. It's never about one platform. Elon owns Twitter now. He's about to be their CEO. He's going to go in. He's going to clean house. He's going to do some things there that are long overdue. But at the end of the day, it's one platform. One. They literally own everything else. All of it. Facebook and all of the platforms that Facebook has bought out. Google, including YouTube. Oh, the irony that I'm broadcasting on that right now. Will I be here next week? Who knows? They own it all. All legacy media. All of legacy media. With the 60% exception of Fox News. Of course, you have the up and comers. You have OAN, and they're coming on strong. But it's easy to tamp them down because they're still in their infancy. But they own all of legacy media. They control all of the entertainment industry. Hence all the bullshit they've got going with Disney and the like right now. Academia, control it. Lock, stock, and fucking barrel. They control it. So why would you be that afraid of one fucking platform? Short answer is they're not. The loss of that platform is corollary to them. It's not their primary action item. What they realize is that they are losing control of the narrative. And that terrifies them. Remember how I'm always saying that people are fundamentally suckers for the truth, right? You can label the truth misinformation or disinformation as much as you want. But we live in a day and age where people can check now for themselves. They can do their own homework. Most don't, including on the right. The sheep on the right are just as easily led, and maybe even more so than the sheep on the left, if you put the proper figurehead in front of them. But at the end of the day, it's the moderates. It's the ones in the middle that you have to look at. And where are the moderates falling right now? CNN, across the board, their ratings are in the shitter. CNN just spent $300 million on a platform that didn't last a fucking month. MSNBC, that Maddow guy. Dude, that Maddow guy's ratings are in the shitter and have been for fucking ever. That Maddow guy peaked on the Russian collusion thing. And then when Mueller came out and said, no, there was no collusion, that's it. That was the end. Never going to fucking recover. CNN is about to cut their fucking staff like a fucking sickle going through grass. So who's getting all the views now? Tucker Carlson has the highest rated show in cable news. I run hot and cold on Tucker. Tucker doesn't do my thinking for me any more than that Maddow guy. But he is what even the moderates are gravitating to. Bill Maher, dyed-in-the-wool liberal as ever there was. He's getting support now from conservatives because he finally stood up to his own fucking home team and went, you guys are fucking insane. They're losing control of the narrative. They are losing control of the narrative in spite of owning academia, entertainment, all of legacy media, and every fucking social media platform except Twitter. That's what they're afraid of. It's not the platform, it's the narrative. So, once the fear response takes hold among the left, what is the obvious recourse? All of the things that are projected on us, that we are dangerous extremists, that we are violent, that we spew lies to whip people into a frenzy, and we're liable to go off half-cocked at a moment's notice and blow up a fucking building or set a city on fire or, attack people in a random fucking hate crime. All of these fucking things that are projected on us, that is their fear response and the way that it manifests. That's why it is so seamless for these people to engage in the most egregious spectacle of Orwellian doublethink I've ever witnessed in my adult life. Because, as I said, the propaganda ministers, they're following the Alinsky rule. They know it's a lie, but they're pushing it. For the faithful, they legitimately believe it. Neil, that's an excellent point. They fear us becoming them. I believe that deep down in their hearts, in their heart of hearts, they really do. They fear that they could be right. But again, that's going to fall into a difference between the faithful and the ministers. You follow me on that? The ministers have done the homework. They know good and goddamn well that we are the people with all of the guns and all of the skills. And that if we truly were what they were painting us out to be, this problem would have been solved a long time ago. Remember Colonel Kurtz, if I had 10 divisions of such men, our problems here would be over very quickly. So the ministers know, but they have to keep pushing the lie. The faithful, they believe it, even while seeing things right in front of them. That is why it is so easy for CNN to get away with saying something as ridiculous as fiery but mostly peaceful protest. Not raising a single eyebrow on the left. So you have a certain sliding scale of outrage. Okay when we do it, insurrection when they do it. The faithful are able to ignore their own violence and their own hypocrisy. Because again, it's that Orwellian doublethink. There is a complete lack of self-awareness. There's a complete lack of reflection on their part. And anytime the cognitive dissonance gets too much for them to bear, they always have the fallback plan. Morally, we are superior to you, and therefore, whatever we do is necessary. Not only necessary, but righteous. We have the moral high ground. Which kind of dovetails into the abortion thing. And I did want to touch on that, and we will touch on that. In fact, we're going to jump into that with both feet right now. Morality. I want to go into my stance on this first because I want to be abundantly clear. My stance on this is complex and nuanced. I am not an either-or person on the issue of abortion. My libertarian leanings and my intellectual honesty compel me to say that yes, anyone has a right to do with their own body what they wish. That's a moral compulsion. What a moral compulsion is not, and the specific point where the left lost the moral high ground on this one, was the absolutism. The absolutism. Let's look at Europe. When the fact checkers get hold of that, they will say that every single industrialized nation, every single EU nation has legalized abortion on request or on broad social grounds. Poland and Malta are the only EU member states that do not, and they're very fond of trumpeting that. The back half that they don't tell you is that in most of those countries, that applies only through the first trimester of pregnancy. Oopsie. But these ghouls here in the States, again, falling back on that absolutism, where they lost the moral high ground and where they lost the debate with thinking sensible people. They're very fond of saying that 60% of, 60 to 70% of the American public wanted Roe versus Wade to remain in place. What they don't bother mentioning is that hardly any of those people understand the true nature of the decision and how legally baseless the law was. Outside of abortion as a moral principle, we're talking about the law. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, their poster child for women's rights, said that it was a badly written law. It was a house of cards. The house of cards is tipping now. Here's what the draft does. Nothing. Absolutely fucking nothing. It's a draft. They haven't even solidified the opinion yet. Why was it released? We know why it was released. Who released it? We pretty well know who released it. A clerk. If I had to guess, I would say Sotomayor's office. Do you want to know what happens to those drafts and every other piece of paper that comes out of the Supreme Court building? Do some homework on this. Think about this. This was leaked wholesale to a media outlet that took it and ran with it. Every piece of paper, they have very, very, very strict controls on those decisions as they're going through the entire process. Things don't get emailed generally. Most of those digital files stay on one person's computer and are not committed to a network. Everything is still done the old style with printing on paper. And every piece of paper that comes out of SCOTUS is placed into a burn bag and then run through a cross-cut shredder, and then one step further, treated with a chemical liquid that turns it into a slurry. Look it up. So how did this get released? Well, it got released with intent. And again, I'm going to say a clerk from Sotomayor's office. What does this draft do? Nothing. It's just a draft. The decision hasn't even been rendered yet. But if it is rendered, what happens? With regard to federal law on abortion, there will be no federal law on abortion. It'll get handed to the states. So the absurdity that is being spewed by the mainstream media right now about abortion is beyond reprehensible. For Joe Biden, the cadaver in chief, to stand up and say, well, if that's going to stand, what if they say gay kids can't be in the same classrooms with straight kids? What fuck are you talking about? Have any of these people actually read the draft? I'm going to say that they haven't. Because Alito was very, very specific, razor specific in the wording of that brief, in the wording of that draft, that this applied to this particular case. And you're absolutely right, Ryan, plan 1,000%. That it applied to this particular case on this particular issue, period. And very specifically went on to say that no one should take this to extrapolate into a bigger thing about this thing, that thing, or the other thing, that it was completely unrelated. So they know, again, the difference between the ministers and the faithful. The ministers know goddamn well that LGBT kids aren't going to be kept out of classrooms with straight kids. They know good and goddamn well that this will not outlaw abortion. It just sends it back to the states. They know good and goddamn well that there is fuck all to do with outlawing gay marriage or interracial marriage or anything of the fucking sort. They know this. But they push the lie anyway because it's a Linsky textbook. The faithful, they believe it. But here's where it goes one step further, that projection problem. You see, the right wing, we are extremist. We are dangerous. We are violent. What is the first fucking thing that happened with regard to these fucking maggots? They doxed Supreme Court justices. Ponder that. Supreme Court justices. Those of us who did actually have the benefit of going through civics class, we understand the nature of checks and balances between the three branches of government. Both teams have been amassing inordinate amounts of power to the executive branch over the last several administrations. Both teams are guilty of that. But the legislature is still responsible for making the laws. And the judicial branch is the final check and balance. Because the judicial branch gets to say that law is unconstitutional and therefore can't be enforced. Now, they don't have any problem with judicial overreach, as they're very fond of lamenting, as long as it benefits them. Judicial overreach, say, in the case of Roe versus Wade itself. Massive judicial overreach. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg agreed. But when it benefits them, they don't have a problem. Let somebody stick to the letter of the law and do what they said was their job in the Constitution, what was delegated to them to interpret and determine the constitutionality of the law. Well, now it's an overreach. Now it's a crisis. Now we got to stack the court. Now we got to go in and codify it into law and pass constitutional amendments and blah, 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 blah. Panic, panic, panic. What it amounts to is we don't get our fucking way. Now, again, getting back to the absolutism. You want to know where I'm at on abortion? I'll tell you where I'm at on abortion. I believe in my heart of hearts that abortion is murder. I believe that. Here's the thing. I'm totally okay with murder. I'm totally okay with murder as long as you can articulate why that murder needs to happen. Come up with some justification, even if it's only your own moral code, about why this murder is okay. Self-defense, mercy killing, whatever. But you're going to call it murder. Or at the very fucking least, you were going to draw some kind of line of distinction between an entity that exists within the body of another entity whose existence depends on that other entity in question, but is an autonomous life form with its own unique DNA separate from the entity that it is attached to. That full on has the potential under any ordinary set of circumstances to become a viable life. And according to the purists, even after the point where it has become viable, still okay to kill it. You don't get to do that and act as if what you are doing is no different than having your appendix removed or taking out a sliver of impacted earwax. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. You want to come to me and say, look, I cannot afford this child. No adoption agency will take it. Even if an adoption agency did take it, it's not a white kid and nobody wants to adopt it unless it's a white kid. You want to make that case, make that fucking case. But don't do this. Don't do this walking around at a demonstration with a t-shirt bragging about the 21 abortions you've had and think that I'm going to think you're anything but a sick fucking ghoul. Don't come to me. Look it in the face. Look it in the fucking face. Look at what you're doing. If you could look at a sonogram and say, hey, it's a clump of cells because you're 4 weeks in and it only looks like a clump of cells, that's between you and God. That's not for me to fucking judge. But why? Why do the absolutists want so fucking hard to prevent women from having to look at sonograms once they've reached a certain fucking level? Because they know if they have to look it in the face, they're going to realize that is a human life. And again, I'm totally okay with murder. Even after you've been born and walked around in the world for 20, 30 some odd years, I'm totally okay with ending a fucking human life. Got no qualms about it. As long as I can articulate why. And as long as I can say this was murder. I don't get to slit some fucking pedophile's throat and stand in front of a jury and say, sorry, man, this was a postnatal abortion in the 416th trimester. I don't get to do that. It's a fucking murder. So let's look at some other myths. How about this one? Coat hangers, right? They want to sell us on that. Never happened. When I say never, the women who died and were permanently fucking maimed during quote unquote back alley abortions, those injuries did not come as a result of self-induced abortions with coat hangers. In fact, in my digging, I could only find one example, one in the UK of anything like that ever happening. Here's what I found was that the ones who were maiming, injuring, and in a lot of cases killing women were medical doctors. Medical doctors performing procedures using injection of fluids directly into the uterus, that sort of thing. Coat hanger abortions is a fucking myth. All right. We're appealing to emotion. But as long as we're appealing to emotion, and as long as I'm on about why I feel, how I feel about the issue and why I feel that fucking way, where they lost the American public. I love you, Ryan. Know that I did see that. Where they lost the moral high ground and where they lost the argument with the majority of the American public is when they went to the absolute of up to the moment of birth. That's where they lost it. I'll give you a little something on my own fucking personal history. During the 1992 Republican convention, I was on the front line defending women going into abortion clinics. I walked them through that slew of Jesus junkies swinging sticks and hucking bricks to get them to their reproductive health care. Do you want to know when the pro-choice people decided they didn't want me around protecting their women anymore? Because in the middle of this demonstration, and yeah, there were a lot of fucking focus on the family scumbags out there, but there were also some good, heartfelt, Bible believing Christians in that fucking mob. And a group of them not blocking the sidewalk, not blocking the street, some of whom were women, got down on their knees to pray. That part isn't what got to me. Watching these defenders of women's rights and reproductive health while these people were on their knees taking cheap shots at these people knelt down praying. Punches to the head, kicks, knees, striking, pulling hair on a couple of the women. Outright physical violence, and all these people were doing were on their knees to pray. And even though I was there to provide quote unquote clinic defense, got my head split from my fucking trouble. I was there to provide clinic defense. I was there to walk women through that gauntlet so they wouldn't have to deal with that fucking fear. I see these guys punching and kicking a group of people that are on their knees praying. I stepped right in the middle of it and I put a stop to that real fucking quick. Suddenly, my services were no longer required. In fact, they sent me and Johnny Bodman, who was with me at the time, they sent us over to another clinic. Because, yeah, it's getting really ugly over at this other clinic, and, we need some muscle over there. Keep in mind, 1992, days before cell phones and Google Maps and anything like that. So we took them at their word. We took the address. We drove over there. Not only was nothing happening, but that clinic in question was closed. And it was on the far north side of town. Houston's a big fucking place. They want your help. As long as you're one of the faithful, as long as you're willing to go that fucking distance. So when these moral absolutists come at it with this, yes, we have the right to kill this baby all the way through to the moment of birth. When Governor Northam of fucking Virginia says that even after a child is born, we will do our best to make it comfortable while the mother makes a decision. That's not reproductive health care. That's fucking infanticide. And I'm not afraid to call that what it is. If you were going to reduce it to absolutism, if the absolutes that I have to choose from are fucking shut it all down on the one hand, or on the other hand, permit me to drill a hole into a fucking infant's skull while it's crowning, I'm going to go shut it down. Absolutely, and without equivocation and without apology. So how about we find some fucking nuance? Like they were saying about Europe, they're really big on telling you that every EU nation, besides Malta and Poland, allows on-demand abortion. They don't mention that generally only runs through the first fucking trimester. They're all about late-term abortions when the life of the mother is threatened. You talk to any fucking doctor, and he will tell you if the life of a mother is going to be threatened, it is going to happen. They're going to be well aware of it in the first and at the latest the second trimester. Third trimester abortions because the mother's life is threatened does not happen. Doesn't. And none of your emotional arguments are going to change that fucking statistical reality. None of your emotional arguments are going to change the fact that even in Europe, where they're progressive, where they are egalitarian, they generally don't allow it. They generally do not allow it. Past 12 weeks. In fact, we'll just scroll through real quick, and then I just pull up a real quick entry. It took me 10 seconds to figure this out. Denmark, right? Austria, second trimester abortions are only allowed if there is a serious risk to the woman's life, physical health, or mental health that cannot be averted by other means. That's in Austria. And that's talking second trimester. Or if the woman is under 14 years of age. Denmark allows abortion after the first trimester for a variety of reasons, but the woman needs to have an authorization from the state to have such an abortion. In Finland, abortion even just up to 12 weeks require authorization from 2 doctors outside of special circumstances. Health professionals in Italy can legally refuse to perform an abortion. Conscientious objection has the practical effect to restricting access. In Ireland, they're Catholic. Do I really need to go into it? But even in Ireland, the new law enacted in 2018 allows abortion on request up to, but only up to 12 weeks of pregnancy, first trimester. And on and on and on. Feel free to do your own homework. So if you're going to tell a story, don't tell half the fucking story. You're going to say this. You're going to say that 60 or 70% of the American public support the right to an abortion. No, what you said was that 60 to 70% of the people supported Roe v. Wade. 60% of the American public hasn't fucking read Roe v. Wade. And they're basing it on emotional arguments. And when you dig deeper, you talk to these people that support abortion rights. They don't support it all the way up to what these people are talking about. And don't tell me that that's an extreme example, because in Colorado, it's been codified into law up to the moment of birth. Nothing fucking restricting that. Ooh, bounce that off the people, the 60 or 70% that fucking support that shit. Because you paint one picture, and that is the picture that you give them. Again, control the stimulus, control the response. But that has everything to do with how I feel about it on a personal level. And I will never give birth. So one can make the case that it's none of my fucking business. But as my friend, my brother, has discussed over here, I'll let you read the rest of that for yourself. The men have no say. Ryan, when you're watching the replay, just know that I've been following that, and I'm pretty fucking choked up about it. Don't tell me that we got no right to a fucking opinion. We were just as much there as you are. If we're going to base it on purely emotional arguments and logic has left the room, well, I'm going to go follow logic. Logic tells me that there are 2 parties to this. I still, in my heart of hearts, believe in physical and bodily autonomy, regardless of circumstances. But can we call it what it is? Go read the draft. In fact, Politico has a thing, 10 key passages. You can just read those. You can read those from the draft itself. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. You see that? Check and balance. Doesn't outlaw a goddamn thing. Just returns it to the legislatures. And the federal legislature, here's the point, could actually codify it into law. In fact, they have declared their intent to do just that. But this is not the fucking Handmaid's Tale. And this is not the birth of an intolerant religious theocracy in the United States. And this is not any of the things of which it's been made out to be. Go read the draft yourself. On many other occasions, this court has overruled important constitutional decisions. Without these decisions, American constitutional law, as we know it, would be unrecognizable, and this would be a different country. Also, from the fucking draft. Leaving aside for a minute that the same people who have spent the last fucking 5 to 6 years tearing down statues, burning courthouses, excising unfortunate facts from history books, retelling the entire story of the founding of the United States of America, defacing historical monuments. These people, after 6 years, now want to talk to us about the importance of honoring traditions. Go fuck yourself. Sanctimonious fuck. You have the right. You have the fucking right. I will defend that fucking right. But we are going to talk about goddamn nuance. We are going to talk about the importance of nuance rolling forward. We're going to talk about the importance of dispelling myths. Supreme Court defined health, et cetera, all the way up through 9 months until this fucking draft. And again, it hasn't even gone through yet. According to national polls, 61% of Americans, remember what they're telling us, that 60 to 70% of people support Roe versus Wade. 61% of Americans say abortion should be illegal after the fetal heartbeat has begun. 72% of Americans say that abortion should be illegal after the first trimester. 86% of Americans say that abortion should be illegal after the second trimester. Only 16% of Americans say that abortion should be legal at any time for any reason. 16%. But who's getting the media attention? Why? Because they project. Why? Because they have a narrative to defend. Are they afraid of the law being overturned here? Are they afraid of a bad decision being overturned as the bad decision that it was? No. What they're deathly afraid of, they keep saying we're trying to take choices away. They're taking choices away from women. No, you are taking choices away from the fucking American public. What they're deathly afraid of here is that people are actually going to have their choice, because they know that if this is handed back to the majority of the people, then we'll have some nuance. Again, 86% of Americans say abortion should be illegal after the first 6 months. After the second trimester, 86% of Americans say that abortion should be illegal. What about their choice? What about the choice of fathers? The United States has the highest abortion rate in the Western world. There are 1.31 million induced abortions every single year in the United States. It's going to disproportionately affect Black communities. Well, yeah, because they're 5 times as likely to get an abortion. It's almost as if the founder of Planned Parenthood might have been a devout eugenicist or something. Margaret Sanger, look it up. Now, you want to talk about nuance? I am a huge eugenics advocate. Full fucking disclosure. Huge eugenics advocate. But just like I believe abortion is murder, as long as you call it what it is, I'm okay with murder. It's eugenics. If what you're going to do is that, then you need to call it what the fuck it is. Don't talk to me about reproductive health when the founder of Planned Parenthood had every intention of exterminating the mentally unfit or the violent criminality element. English translation, black people. You can minimize that all you want. I'm about truth, man. At the end of the day, I'm no guru. I'm just a fucking crane operator with some opinions. But I'm about truth. I'm about calling something what the fuck it is. I'm about when you were looking at a second trimester, third trimester abortion, and you were looking at the parts of that clump of cells, that fetus, that human life that had to be extracted. Skull had to be fucking crushed to take that out. Is it your choice? Oh, yeah. I still believe it's your choice. I still believe, as a matter of principle, that the state doesn't have any grounds whatsoever to interfere in that if you want to do it. But fuck if I'm going to sit here and let you act and reassure yourself that what you've done is no different than having your tonsils out or having your fucking appendix removed. It's a goddamn life. You're going to look it in the face. You're going to call it what the fuck it is. A little over a year ago, I met my birth mother for the very first time. Half a century I went without ever having met the woman that gave birth to me. I am told that had the family had their druthers, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That was 1969. 1969, 4 years before it was codified into law. Once it became law of the land, 1973, chances are she would have bowed to the pressure and I wouldn't have made it. I got adopted. White privilege, whatever. There are ways around this. Thank you for that, Ron. I needed a quote. Didn't have time to pull one up. Enough about that. I got a couple more things that I do want to touch on as we move forward here. A couple more bullet points. Again, we get back to sliding scales and we get back to projection. We are violent extremists for exercising a constitutional process. They, on the other hand, are righteous moral defenders for giving out the home addresses in an attempt to intimidate justices. Could you imagine if the tables were fucking reversed? How the media would be handling it? How social media would be handling it? You will, by God, know where I stand on the fucking issue. The media are insisting that if any violence does come from this, it will be from the right wing. They said that. CNN and MSNBC said that with a straight fucking face, that if any violence comes of this decision, it will be from the right wing. You want to talk about fucking projection? Are you goddamn kidding me? That projection is necessary. Why? Because we don't need to be violent. Particularly pro-life advocates, they don't need to be violent. Why? Because they won. And the only hope the other side has is violent intimidation. What did we witness in the run-up to the 2020 election? What did we witness? Violence. The insurrection on January the 6th. Take a look at the violence that was going on in our nation's capital earlier on in 2020, where they set fire to the Secret Service hut at the front gate of the fucking White House, where they were shaking the fences at the goddamn White House, and half of fucking DC was on fire. And the president had to go into his own private bunker, and then they made fun of him for retreating into the fucking bunker. But out of 250,000 people on the ground, 1,000 people entered the fucking U.S. Capitol, better than half of whom are immediately fucking incarcerated and still being held. And that's a fucking insurrection. Already violence being committed in Los Angeles against police officers in the wake of the release of this fucking SCOTUS brief. What are we heading into, people? It's 2022. Midterm elections coming up. Time to start ramping that shit up. And the projection's going to get worse. Getting back to the Chappelle thing, everything that they do, every bit of violence they commit is justified because it's self-defense. It's self-defense, you see. We're stopping the rise of fascism. We are stopping the growth of tyranny, which is why we have to institute fascist and tyrannical procedures. We're stopping the spread of misinformation, which is why we have to deliberately misinform you. Double speak, double think. I don't know if I'm reading Orwell or fucking Alinsky anymore. But maybe I should just roll over, give up the ghost, and learn to trust Big Brother. Probably not wired like that. At the end of the day, we are winning. We are winning based on no greater evidence than the fact of the desperation to which they have resorted. And bet your ass it will get way fucking worse before it gets better. But remember this. Will there be irregularities? Certainly, there will be irregularities. They're already ramping up the violence because that's one more way to lock everything down to ensure the security of the election. They're already talking about new strains of COVID and other threats to the public health because that's a way to lock everything down and allow universal mail-in balloting and ballot harvesting. 2,000 mules. Look it up. See it. And I'm going to leave it at that. I don't need to fucking persuade anybody. See the fucking film. Judge for yourself. Every fact check that's been issued on that fucking film. You guys remember a movie called Passion of the Christ, right? And Hollywood shredded it. It's rabidly anti-Semitic. Horribly violent, misguided, lies, deceptions, taking liberties with the scriptures. Only problem was the film wasn't even finished yet. Anything to discourage people from even giving it a chance. Well, the fact checkers are out in force behind 2,000 mules. And every single one of their fact checks are based on the trailer. You see, up until last night, if you weren't a friend of Trump's hanging at Mar-a-Lago, you hadn't even seen the goddamn thing. But just like everything else, just like the Pfizer data dump, right? Just like the Pfizer data that they wanted to have buried for 75 years, and the federal judge said, no, you're going to fucking release it. And so they're dumping a little bit every time. This last Pfizer data dump, 1,200 people died in the first 3 months. 1,200 people died in the first 3 months of that fucking vaccine trial. Tens of thousands of adverse reactions, adverse effects, health problems, blood clots, myocarditis, sudden heart attacks. And what is the excuse that we're giving? Fact check, false. Oh, okay, well, it's false. It's bullshit. It's been debunked. Until you read a little bit deeper, and every one of those fact checks says, yes, these numbers are 100% accurate, but there's nothing saying that the vaccine caused any of these things. It just happened to happen to people who were part of the vaccine trial within the first 3 months of the vaccine trial. But there's nothing saying the vaccine did this. Do you see how it works? Are you starting to get it? 2,000 mules. Don't see it. Oh, it's all lies. It's misrepresented. GPS data isn't that accurate. Dinesh D'Souza's a very bad man. Nobody had seen the fucking thing until last night. They tore it apart based on a trailer in the same way they tore Mel Gibson apart based on an incomplete film. Anything to keep you from looking for yourself. Who are you going to trust? The government? Who are you going to trust? The government or your own lying eyes? 2,000 mules. See it. Decide for yourself. The Pfizer data dump. See it. Decide for yourself. The SCOTUS draft. Read it. Decide for yourself. Do you see the pattern developing here? People who are confident in what they are presenting don't have any qualms about people digging deeper on their own. It's only people that are afraid of what truth people might find if they do their own fucking thinking that comes up with shit like this. And who's afraid? Who's afraid right now? They're running fucking scared because ultimately people are suckers for the truth. People who actually read the law and legal decision on Roe v. Wade are going to look and they're going to say exactly what their hero Ruth Bader Ginsburg did. This is a house of cards. It's a bad law. It needs to be retried on a different premise. People who look at the actual history of abortion in the United States are going to realize that they've been sold a bill of fucking goods about back alleys and coat hangers. People that had one perception of the way things were supposed to go, how egalitarian and progressive they are over in Europe, if they seriously look for themselves, are going to find out, holy shit, most mainstream Americans feel exactly the way that the Europeans have codified into law. Fine up until 12 weeks, through the second trimester, severely restricted, after the second trimester, off the fucking table as an option. And that's why they need their disinformation boards. That's why they need their control of the narrative. That's why they need to control the perception so they control your reality. That's the reason why they need to control the stimulus so they can control your response. Because at the end of the day, thinking for yourself might lead you to the truth. And a truth that differs from the fucking narrative does their side no good. Here's the greatest part about truth. The greatest part about factual statements, the greatest part about actually thinking something through critically rather than letting other people do your thinking for you, whether it is Tucker Carlson or Glenn Beck or that Maddow guy or that Stelter bitch or Jen Psaki. The greatest thing about learning to think critically, doing your own homework, and arriving at the truth that resonates with you the greatest thing about that is that you've cut the strings. And you're not anyone's puppet. The truth shall set you free. The truth shall piss you off. But for all the people who are fact-checking and narrative controlling, hashtag intellectual gymnastics, spinning themselves into circles to tell you to trust anything but your own lying fucking eyes, the thing that they have lost sight of is that at its core, the truth does not need a law to protect it. So if they are demanding to regulate how you perceive an event, and you know by default that the truth doesn't need a law to protect it, you should probably start by asking yourself, what truth is their law trying to protect? And that maybe, just maybe, you don't let these same people who are trying to dictate your thought process, dictate your perception and therefore your reality, dictate your stimulus and therefore your response, that maybe instead of trusting them, that we can lose the fear that they have instilled in us and learn to trust ourselves again. I am the Reverend, that is the gospel. At the end of the day, just a crane operator with some opinions, people. Not a fucking guru. All I got's what I got. But I'm going to give it to you. At the end of the day, I'm going to tell you this too, man. Again, the reason why I don't want to get into cliches about how it's always darkest before the dawn, everything else. I don't need to get into all that. The reason why it's getting so gray and the reason why it's getting so bleak is the fact that we are fucking winning. And at the end of the day, fundamentally, people are suckers for the truth, and the truth is on our side, Bubba. Remember that quote from X, JFK film? Fundamentally, people are suckers for the truth. And I fully believe that. And I fully believe that the truth is winning the day. Gonna get ugly before we get through that final victory, but we're well on our way. So for all you people who back in 2020 were like, oh, America's over and our best days are behind us, and I fucking told y'all, there's never been a better time to be who the fuck we are than right now, that we are past the tipping point, that we've got so much to look forward to because the centrists are shaking off the fence, and when they shake off, they fall squarely on our fucking side. And I was right. And going forward, I'm going to continue to be right. You're going to continue to be right because we know in our hearts that we are right, that our ideology is right, that our minds are right. Boy, you got your mind right. At the end of the day, man, just a crane operator with some opinions. Dollar Tree Alex Jones is one guy called me on Twitter. I love that. I own it. Appreciate you guys being here, man. Hey, look, if you guys... if anything I said, was worth it to you, want to chuck me a couple of bucks, I'm going to pass around that digital collection plate. I'm on Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Facebook Pay, whatever the hell. You want to throw me a little bit of coin, helps out the program, helps us keep up with this kind of stuff. But it's not a real big deal. If you can't do that, that's fine. Here's what you can do for me. You dig what I have to say, and you know other people that are like-minded or kindred spirits that might also dig what I have to say. Tell them about the program. Let them know, give them a little heads up, say, hey, man, there's this fat, toothless, crippled motherfucker who gets some rants and raves for an hour or two every Sunday. Think you might dig it? Tell them about the program and check it out, man. Might be worth it. But for all of my sinner sisters, for all of my prophets of doom, my OG Reverends Rangers out there, always remember that the most important things you can do are not just the things you do for me, but to do for yourselves, and that's to follow the directives. They will try to crush you with the noise. You've got to be that signal and not get buried in the noise. Be the signal in a world full of noise. You got to be that light. When they try to bury you with the fucking darkness, you got to be that light in a world full of darkness. And first and foremost and above all else, the iron rule, you got to be that strength in a world full of weakness, because without the strength to get through, nothing else matters. I appreciate you guys being here. Y'all help me to be strong. Appreciate you guys coming back Sunday after Sunday. I love y'all. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Stay strong. Keep your head on a swivel and cover your six. I'm going to be around for you. See you next Sunday, folks. Thanks for coming out. Hey. Appreciate you more than you know, people. Thank you.